Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire.
Welcome back, everybody. Breaking news on the question of who might need to testify at the impeachment trial. A judge today dismissing a high-profile case that could have set a precedent for potential impeachment witnesses. A top aide to John Bolton had sued to avoid testifying in the House. The judge dismissing that lawsuit after the House dropped the subpoena. The key here is that Bolton had cited that suit as a reason not to testify. That obstacle no longer existing. Joining me now is former acting Solicitor General Neil Katyal. Neil, good evening to you. Thanks for joining us on this. Some major breaking news with regards to possible testimony from John Bolton, as I just talked through a bit. I want to play a bit of what John Bolton said about this case last week, and then get you to weigh in.
Although I have a lot to say on the subject, the prudent course for me is just to decline to comment at this point.
Why not testify? People ask. I want you to have an opportunity to answer that.
Well, I appreciate that, but as I say, Dr. Kupperman, my former deputy, is in litigation now on what to me is a critical separation of powers question. When the House issues a subpoena, and in his case, and I think it would be true in mine, the president tells him not to testify, which authority controls? Dr. Kupperman went to court to seek the third branch's opinion in this conflict between the first two.
So waiting on the opinion of Kupperman's case, we have that opinion. It's now moot. Nothing seems to be standing in the way of a Bolton testimony. Is this excuse, Neil, now gone?
So I think you're right here. So I think the bottom line is that John Bolton now has no rock to hide behind anymore, that he really should testify. And to back up, Yasmin, the basic way this works is in impeachment proceedings from our nation's history from the start on, it's always been the case that because impeachment is the sole remedy the American people have against an abusive president, documents and witnesses come out. For example, in the Andrew Johnson Senate trial, there were 41 witnesses. President Polk once said in 1846, in impeachment situations, Congress should get everything that they want. And what President Trump did is he issued an unprecedented gag order. It's never happened before in American history that the president has said everything, every witness, every document can't be turned over. And there were obviously some witnesses, including Trump administration officials, who defied that and went and testified in Congress, like Ambassador Sondland, Fiona Hill, and the like. But Bolton and Kupperman did not. They instead filed a lawsuit saying, we don't know what to do. Now, while their lawsuit was pending, there was a separate case involving Don McGahn, the White House counsel, and in an opinion by Judge Jackson, she rejected in the most sweeping, elegant terms Trump's claims about immunity and not having these witnesses testify and the like. And the bottom line is now Judge Jackson's opinion, which says, quote, presidents aren't kings, and folks like McGahn have to testify, is now going to control what Bolton has to do.
The Kupperman lawsuit as well was something that Mick Mulvaney, I believe, wanted to attach himself to, that Bolton and Kupperman kind of pushed aside and said, this isn't something that you could be attached to. You're not part of our team.
Right. I mean, all these witnesses were trying to hide and not tell what they know to the American people. And as you were discussing earlier in the panel, the New York Times story from yesterday explains exactly why. Because Bolton, Mulvaney, Esper, and Duffy, the four exact people that the White House, that the Democrats have wanted to testify as witnesses in the Senate, those are the four people in the story. Those are the same people trying to hide behind these rocks. And what the federal judges have said, and in particular Judge Jackson, is, you can't do that. this is the American people's right. And what Donald Trump is essentially doing is saying, even in the Republican Senate, the Senate that his party controls, right, he's not going to let these witnesses testify. I mean, he is so afraid of the truth coming out. He's acting as guilty as sin.
So this is a huge development here. What is the likelihood? Because you heard it from John Bolton's mouth in that NPR interview that I just aired, and that he said before he brought up the Kupperman case, he actually said, look, I have a lot to share, but I'm going to base my decision off of what is decided within this Kupperman case. And now that has been put aside. So what is the likelihood that we could feasibly see John Bolton testify in the Senate trial, that there would be enough pressure placed on Leader McConnell in which he would have to concede and say, yes, John Bolton will be testifying, along with possibly Pompeo, with Mark Esper, with Mulvaney following the lead?
I've always thought, Yasmin, that the testimony of these folks was an exceptionally high probability, and today's decision, I think, reaffirms that. I would say it's not just McConnell. It's two other points, that one that Neera Tanden made a moment ago, that just a few Republican senators can change the rules that McConnell wants, even if he wants to march in total lockstep with the White House. And after all, every one of those senators is going to have to take an oath of impartial justice. But number two, Yasmin, our Constitution says that the Chief Justice presides when the impeachment is of the President of the United States. That's the only time the Chief Justice presides. And this Chief Justice is known for fairness, is known for truth-seeking. The idea that, I think that he's going to let a trial take place with no witnesses when it sure looks like a cover-up is happening is, I think, a pretty tough one to stomach. And so, go ahead. No,
I just quickly wanted to get your take on this last thing with regards to the Office of Management and Budget and the lawyers that were basically trying to develop an argument to defend the president here. And that argument was basically that the president's role as commander-in-chief would simply allow him to override Congress with regards to withholding this aid to Ukraine. Does that hold any water to you legally?
Yeah, I think the technical legal argument, the legal name for such an argument is poppycock. I mean, that is one of the silliest and stupidest arguments I have ever heard since I graduated from law school. That it is clear as day that the Constitution puts the Congress in the driver's seat when it comes to the budget. Nobody believes this, not even the OMB itself, neither then when the story was reported, nor now. They've never relied on this. No president has. It's ridiculous. And if they want to make that argument, make our day, because that is a joke of an argument.
It is Tuesday, the 31st of December of 2019. And you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Just a small hint, a mere dash, a scant pinch of hot smoked Hungarian paprika will make all the difference in the world. And it really does. It does. Well, happy New Year's Eve day. Tomorrow we start another year. And for me, 2019 couldn't end fast enough, though the loss of my son is really forever. Getting through this first year of firsts turned out to be a lot more difficult than I had given it when, at this time last year, we were in the immediate throes of the loss of our son. Had a big bash at my ex's place yesterday, it being the 1-year anniversary of his passing. Had about 40 of his friends over, and I video conferenced with them. I had to be alone. Yeah, I had to be solitary. I did spend time over the Christmas holidays, as you know, with my grandkids. But for some reason, I just didn't want to be around a bunch of people, even though all those people are family and friends of my son. But it was a grand gathering. He continues to impress even those that barely met him. He had quite an impact on them, and that is always heartening to hear One wants to believe that their progeny have some impact on the world, or will. For it to be affirmed it touches the heart indeed. Well, 2019 is coming to an end, and 2020 can't begin fast enough. Though, when I take stock of how time has changed, I mean, the Rose Bowl on January 1st, New Year's Day, was the game. The game. Now it's just, what are they going to call it now? The Petco feed your dog and cat Rose Bowl? Maybe. Every corporation out there has some sort of bowl now, and I kind of like the old bowls, like the chrysanthemum bowl. What happened to the chrysanthemum bowl? It's some corporate thing now. Was there ever a chrysanthemum bowl? Yeah, I bet there was. So the Rose Bowl doesn't have as great import as it once had, even though the University of Oregon is playing in it. You would think. But times change. And maybe we will change with it, or maybe we'll change the times to something a little bit more, shall we say, equitable to all. That would be nice, wouldn't it? So we are in a dire game. Bill Barr thinks that America is going to hell. Well, of course, an Opus Dei loon like Bill Barr, who can't stand the idea of liberals in general, let alone black and brown people with self-determination, running a representative democracy is just not done. You need the right people, and the right people, I got to tell you, are white. Right makes white. And white is right. Don't you know? It's everywhere you look. And according to Bill Barr, he's got to make America no longer a representative democracy, but a theocratic dictatorship. Now, I want to know, if he's such a moralist, how does he justify a pussy-grabbing mobster like Donald Trump? Ends justify the means? What kind of morality is that? Let me remind folks, when the Russians hacked the DNC, Hillary and the DNC took it to the FBI. When the Russians hacked the RNC did nothing except fire the people that came and told them, hey, you know what? You better look out. And Sally Yates was gone. That's right, mere weeks after he was installed in the Oval Office. So, there's that. Oh, another story that came across the transom that seems rather odd. In any other time, this would have probably caused a president to have to resign, but not this one. This is just one of those offhand little things that just happens in this administration. And that was the weeks-long effort to purge whoever it was in Belgium that liked a Chelsea Clinton tweet. You liked he didn't even RT it, liked it. Somebody in Belgium, working in the Belgium United States diplomatic offices over there, liked a Chelsea Clinton tweet. And that is just not done because obviously we are the enemy. Vlad and Donnie can have a private chat, and we get to hear it from Vlad. You know, we still haven't heard an official readout from the United States about Don and Vlad's chat. Vlad thanked him for information and being able to suppress a terrorist threat. You mean somebody running against him and they raided their offices? Could it be that terrorist threat? Navalny's offices being raided just last week? Is it that information that Donnie was able to give him? I don't think that's much information. I think there's something else going on. We all know what it is. Mm-hmm. What if that military aid that was held up from Ukraine, Donnie was trying to figure out some way to get those hundreds of millions over to Vlad? Because, you know, Vlad's GDP is less than Italy's. He needs some cash. But it's a little bit hard to do that. You know, the United States Treasury is not quite like Deutsche Bank yet. With München in charge. It could very well become so, but not yet. And I wonder. That should be a question that could be brought up in the Senate if we get to have a trial. And are we really counting on John Roberts to be the paradigm of fairness? The umpire only calls balls and strikes? Yeah. We'll see. I'm not convinced. I'm just not. Well, what's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Of course, that was Neil Katyal. At the top, criticizing the GOP impeachment strategy as a poppycock defense of a cover-up. We all know that. In fact, I have trademarked the phrase, "I told you so." Well, it's pending, but I better get it. They better give it to me. I told you so. Indeed. On the rest of the menu, Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy really wants you to forget about all those Republicans fleeing the House. They can't get away from the sinking ship fast enough, apparently. Uber and Postmates sued to block the California law protecting gig workers, claiming the measure is unconstitutional. Yeah, you help workers, that's against the law. Everybody knows that. And Christianity Today split with Trump highlights a deeper issue in white evangelical America. Apparently, they're not creating more youngins to be white evangelical Americans. Well, they're making progeny. The progeny's just not becoming white evangelical Americans. After the break, we then move to the chef's table, where in what is seen as a gesture of political goodwill to form a government, Spain's state attorney recommended the release of a jailed Catalan separatist leader. And South Korea indicted its former justice minister on a dozen charges after he just resigned over a college admissions bribery scandal. Sounds familiar. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Did you know that at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, to the rightish of the page, is our chat room link that is monitored by Kelly Lincoln? And did you know that we always thank her because she does such stellar work? Well, if you don't, you oughta. And I bet a lot of you already know that, but I'm going to repeat myself anyway, so there. And then did you know that if you look to the leftish of our homepage, at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, across from the chat room link, you're going to notice then the link to our Patreon site. And did you know that we have been continuously broadcasting 24/7, 365 for over 8 years, going on 9 years now? We're well into coming up on our 9th year. Well, we'll have to get through the summer, but still. And we've been able to do it because of the generosity of folks like you, because even though, as Tom has reminded us before, the bulk of what we do comes out of our own wallets, we would still be unable to do it without you, because you are our biggest contributor. So if you could afford an espresso-type coffee drink sent our way once a month, we are able to stretch those dollars really on the quantum level. We're talking smaller than an atom. We're able to stretch those dollars in such a inconceivable measure, really, from just a spare speck. We're able to stretch it to the size of a universe which we've been able to maintain here with your great generosity. And think it, and it will become true. And action then follows. And the next thing you know, Resistance Radio is resisting. Thank you for allowing us to fulfill our civic duty as the founders originally intended all those many eons ago. Eons? Well, quite a while. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, that is so simple because all you have to do is go to @Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that, and thank you, Tom, for that. And he does so much more, too, in such a stellar fashion. And we thank him from the bottom of our hearts as well. You could follow me at Justice Putnam on Twitter, and that's a pretty darn good place to follow me since it's me. And I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime, and then get that linked up on social media for everybody's social media linkage pleasure. And then you could also follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West, because I also post the show notes and links diary there too, you know. As a link, I do. And pick up podcasts, most importantly, by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and really wherever podcasts can be found. There's billions of them. And we're right there in the W's. Or some people out here in the West say W. Okay, we got the squeaky chair going on. We're going to have to fix that by probably replacing it. And I'm sorry if you hear the squeaks in the back, or maybe you don't, and it's just all part of the ambience of Resistance Radio here in the mothership in the Rogue River Valley of Rogue River, Oregon. This first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays, comes our way by way of the American Independent, and it is by Josh Israel. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy mocked the Democratic majority yesterday, Monday, for having fewer members than they started with in 2019. Wow, what a gaslighter. But his own caucus has seen significantly more departures than the Democrats have and will soon face dozens. That's right, dozens as in multiples of 12. The Repugs are going to see dozens of retirements. Under the guise of presenting a year in review for the House Democratic majority, Representative McCarthy, as we all know, is a repug from California, who we also know is on tape, saying that there are two people in America he knows that are directly paid by Vlad. One of them is Rohrbacher, another disgraced and former repug from California, and Donald Trump. And when the crowd, his caucus started snickering, he said, no, I'm serious. I'm not kidding. And then Paul Ryan had to jump in and say, hey, now let's keep this among ourselves, because that's how you can tell we're a family. You know, as in a mob family. We're talking about that Kevin McCarthy. Okay, is he a pandering opportunist? I don't know. He's dumb enough to be a repug, so you never know. Well, he misleadingly noted that the Democrats had issued more subpoenas than laws. Wow, that's a gaslighting lie. Claimed they have fewer members than they started with. Well, we already know that's a gaslighting lie. And opined that they, meaning us, the Democratic majority, jammed through an unpopular impeachment which will cost them their House majority. Well, we know that's a lie because 2018 was a referendum to get more Democrats to take over the House so we could impeach Donald Trump. I am sorry. Stop interviewing Trump voters in that diner in Pennsylvania. Okay? You know, there's other people in middle America who aren't lily white Trump voters. And they don't like Donald Trump one bit. One bit. Well, McCarthy is technically correct that the Democratic caucus is slightly smaller today, 232, than it had at the beginning of the year, which was 235. His own caucus is as well maybe getting smaller still in the upcoming days since the start of 2019. One Democratic member died in office, the illustrious Elijah Cummings of Maryland. One resigned after revenge porn was posted online, Katie Hill of California. which her seat has obviously been stolen. And one switched parties, Jeff Van Drew of New Jersey, and who needs a little blue dog, I don't know, with a twang from the, pack the car? No, it's pork. Pork the gore. Van Drew, get him out of here. But over the same period, one Republican also died, Walter Jones of North Carolina. 2 stepped down for personal reasons. That would be Marino of Pennsylvania and Duffy of Wisconsin. 2 announced their resignations after pleading guilty to federal crimes. Chris Collins of New York, Duncan Hunter of California. And Representative Mark Meadows of North Carolina announced recently that he too may resign in 2020 to take a Trump administration post. But I think he's kind of doing it on the low, Meadows, to try to sneak in some family member to take over the seat. There's some subterfuge. Well, you would expect it. We're talking repugs here. They're transactional. You give me something, I might give you something, but if I give you something, you better pay me. That's how they work. McCarthy's bluster that impeachment is unpopular is not consistent with polling, which shows more Americans support impeachment than oppose it. And lest I remind folks once again, 2018 was a referendum on Donald Trump, and that's why we took over the House. A few House Republicans appear convinced that they will regain the majority after the 2020 election. So far, 25 House Republicans have announced they will not seek re-election in 2020. This is more than triple the number of House Dems who have announced their retirements. If McCarthy was attempting to chest thump about Van Drew's recent switch to the GOP, he should have said the House Democratic majority has a fewer member than they started with. Tim Bellin of Reuters brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Ride-hailing company Uber Technologies, Inc. and courier services provider Postmates, Inc. asked a U.S. court to block a California labor law set to go into effect on Wednesday. That would be January 1st of 2020, by the way. Urging that the bill violates the U.S. Constitution. In a lawsuit filed in Los Angeles federal court, the companies and 2 app-based drivers said the law, which would make it harder for gig economy companies to qualify their workers as independent contractors rather than employees, was irrational, vague, and incoherent, which means it is a well-written law. And finally, these scofflaws might have to be regulated and treat their workers like they should be treated. I love the fact that this class action suit involves only 2 app-based drivers. The Office of California Attorney General Xavier Becerra said in a statement yesterday, Monday, it was reviewing the complaint. The bill, called AB 5, faces multiple legal challenges. The law was signed by California Governor Gavin Newsom in September and has garnered national attention, largely owing to the size of California's workforce and the state's leadership role in establishing policies that are frequently adopted by other states, like clean water, clean air, fair housing practices. Backers of the bill, including labor groups, have argued the law protects workers' rights. By classifying the contractors as employees, the companies would be subject to labor laws that require higher pay and other benefits such as medical insurance. How about the fact that a taxi driver has to pay how much for a medallion? I know the gig economy is, so that anybody can get in. The economy being so bad, everybody needs to be a personal entrepreneur. But please, Do we really want to have unregulated food carts giving people salmonella? I love the idea of food carts, but don't you think that they should at least be regulated so we don't get salmonella? And then what happens if you have a food cart owner who owns, 1,000 food carts? And each one of those food cart independent contractors are not his employees? Please. We know what's going on here. It's like calling your employees partners. They're not employees. We are all co-owners. Yeah, you're co-owners. The companies in their lawsuit said AB5 is a thinly veiled attempt to target and harm gig economy businesses. Singling out app-based workers violates equal protection guaranteed under the Constitution of the United States and California. The companies argued, really? It irreparably harms network companies and app-based independent service providers by denying their constitutional rights to be treated the same as others to whom they are similarly treated. Except for, equal protection and due process under the law as being employees, which they really are. Simon Lewis and Heather Timmons of Reuters bring us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. After evangelical publication Christianity Today published a blistering editorial on what it called Trump's grossly immoral character, some church leaders in the U.S. president himself. It's hard to say the P word when attributed to Donald Trump, mostly because the NetRiz Radio Style Manual says it's not allowed. But oftentimes you have to put it in because it flows with the narrative of the writers who wrote the reportage. Well, he denounced the criticism as elitist and out of touch. I still can't get over the weeks that they went after whoever it was that liked a Chelsea Clinton tweet. Liked it. Didn't even RT it. Liked it. Yeah, because somebody was wondering about Ivanka's credibility and authority to sit at the G20, I believe it was. And he went on, he being Donald Trump, went on and on and on saying, if Bill and Hillary wanted Chelsea to hold their seats, well, that never happened, and Chelsea said it never happened, and someone like that, and apparently they wanted to purge that person as being a traitor to America because they didn't kiss the ass of Donald Trump. Everybody's got to kiss this guy's ass. So Christianity Today, which is not a liberal publication, by the way. I know they're not read by the more extreme elements of the Pentecostals and the white evangelicals because mostly those people don't read. When you're speaking in tongues and rattlesnakes are biting you, I don't think you have the wherewithal to pick up a book to read. Oh, they're picking up the Bible and reading that? Are they? Are they really reading it? Or have they been told? I often wonder about that. But regardless, this guy was labeled as a person with immoral character. As if none of us have been aware of that from the beginning. I mean, even before he got kicked out of the Sharper Image, people were wondering about his immoral character. Like Dad There's a story about his dad trying to kick out a bunch of old, I'm pretty sure they're Jews, by the way. Oh, no. They were just old people who wanted to be able to put up Christmas celebration ornaments and types. And he said no. And he cut off their water and electricity in the middle of the winter. Yeah, well, win at all costs, huh? The coziness, the Republican president who was impeached this month by the Democrat-controlled. It's Democratic. Come on, kids. I know you're working for Reuters. Get it together. His Democratic-controlled House of Representatives is exacerbating a long-term crisis facing white evangelicism. And that is, it is being abandoned by younger generations. And you know why? Because of Donald Trump and his immoral character. Even young evangelicals who are homeschooled know that, putting little kids in icebox baby gulags after kidnapping them from their parents and then throwing their parents across the border somewhere never to be seen again. There is really something immoral about that, now isn't there? Even the kids know it. And we would hope they do. And we hope they do something about it. And it looks like they are. They're voting with their feet. Well, we better get to our break. And when we get back from that break, we are going to go through weather from around the world. And we are going to finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, The End of an Era. It's hard to believe it's been 42 years since the release of the first Star Wars picture. As creator George Lucas often noted, the core story in the hugely popular franchise was about a family. As the Skywalker saga comes to a conclusion, even the most diehard cynic probably won't be able to stop from tearing up a bit, especially when seeing the beloved Princess Leia on screen for the last time, played by the late Carrie Fisher, who died unexpectedly in 2016. Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker contains appearances by other well-known characters from the original trilogy as well, including Lando Calrissian, played by the iconic Billy D. Williams. An unexpected return is that of Emperor Palpatine, who was supposedly killed in Return of the Jedi. Revealing that he is back isn't a spoiler since he's heard on the trailer. We also see Poe, Finn, Rey, and Kylo Ren, played by the now everywhere Adam Driver, who seems to be more determined than ever to follow in the footsteps of his late grandfather, Darth Vader. Also, the mystery of Rey's parentage is finally revealed, explaining why the Force is so strong within her. As Rey and company battle to save the universe once again from the control of Emperor Palpatine, the preeminence of family comes up time and again. As is made clear, though blood family is important, ultimately everybody has the chance to create family, even with people who aren't biologically related. And in addition, the decision to follow the dark side or the light side isn't determined by genetics, but rather it is a choice. It is free will. At just under 2.5 hours, The Rise of Skywalker feels a bit long, but it's a satisfying ride, especially for die-hard fans. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our page on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. You never know if your loved ones are going to like what you bought them for the holidays. But one thing you can count on, a huge pile of paper trash, the detritus from unwrapping presents. Americans spend more than $8 billion a year on wrapping paper, according to a recent report by Sundale Research. And we toss millions of pounds of that precious paper in the garbage. Truth is, it's not that easy to recycle. Metallic or shiny wrapping papers can't be recycled, neither can bows or ribbons, and tissue paper doesn't have long enough fibers for recycling. One municipal recycler suggests composting tissue paper instead. And though we're spending a lot of money on wrapping paper and ribbons today, Grandview Research forecasts we'll be buying more decorative boxes, pouches, and bags in the future, which is a more sustainable choice because those items can be used year after year. Wrapping gifts in fabric, a Japanese tradition, is also growing in popularity. And if you're wondering whether you should even bother wrapping next year's presents, a 1992 study in the Journal of Consumer Psychology found that people were happier with their gifts when they got to unwrap them. So here's an idea. Instead of spending money on wrapping paper, maybe use money as wrapping paper. And that should just about put a bow on it. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
I'm probably okay to have one more drink before I drive home. I'm probably okay. I open the window to stay alert. Probably okay. I just popped some gum in my mouth.
Step out of the car, please.
I probably made a mistake.
Probably okay isn't okay when it comes to drinking and driving. If you see a warning sign, stop and call a cab, a car, or a friend. Buzzed driving is drunk driving. A message brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Welcome to A Cup of Health with CDC, a weekly feature of the MMWR, the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report. I'm Dr. Jeffrey Nemhauser, filling in for your host, Dr. Kathleen Dooling. As the U.S. population ages, more people are at risk for injuries. The largest percentage of injury-related deaths among this group are caused by falls. Elizabeth Burns is with CDC's National Center for Injury Prevention and Control. She's joining us today to discuss ways to prevent injuries and deaths from falls among senior adults. Welcome to the show, Elizabeth.
Thanks for having me.
Elizabeth, what are some of the more common consequences when a senior adult falls?
Well, first, it's important to note that falls are incredibly common. More than 1 in 4 older adults will fall in a given year. Common consequences include loss of independence and an increased fear of falling, as older adults are afraid to do the same kinds of activities they were doing before. And this can actually lead to more falls, as older adults have less strength in their lower body. Common consequences include hip fracture and traumatic brain injury. And ultimately, in 2016, almost 30,000 older adults died because of a fall.
So are falls more common in men or in women?
Falls are more common in women, and more women go to the emergency department because of a fall, and more women die because of a fall. However, the rate of fall deaths are more common in men than women. What this means is that out of 100,000 men, more will die from a fall than out of 100,000 women.
What are common causes of falls among older people?
Getting on and off the toilet and getting in and out of bed are common causes of falls. Walking around the hallways at night when the lights are off is a common way people fall. There's also an increased amount of medications used in seniors, which have side effects like making them lightheaded, and that increases the risk of falls and is a common cause.
With all of those factors, what are some ways our listeners can decrease their chances of falling?
Older adults should talk to their healthcare provider or doctor about how they can decrease their chances of falling. This can be done during the annual wellness visit or during annual physicals. The doctor will recommend an exercise program that should increase strength and balance, or maybe refer you to a physical therapist. Additionally, they can look through your medications and perhaps reduce your doses or suggest medications that decrease your chances of falls.
Are there things we can do to modify our homes to prevent falling?
Oh, absolutely. Installing grab bars on the side of the toilet, making sure that rugs are taped down or removed, making sure that there's lighting in the hallways are all really simple ways that an older adult can modify their home to prevent falls.
Where can listeners go to get more information about preventing falls?
Listeners can go to cdc.gov/steady, and that's spelled STEADI.
Thanks, Elizabeth. I've been talking today with Elizabeth Burns about ways to prevent fall-related injuries and deaths among senior adults. Improving strength and agility through regular exercise and removing potential obstacles in the home can help decrease the risk for falls. If you or a loved one is older and struggle with mobility, talk with a healthcare provider about ways to decrease the risks for fall-related injuries and death. Until next time, be well. This is Dr. Jeffrey Nemhauser for A Cup of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution, and you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage, because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
What's an old lang syne anyway?
Listen up. This matters. I'm Louis Black, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute with ACLU attorney Bill Newman.
It's a song written in part by the Scottish poet Robert Burns in 1778 and set to the tune of a traditional Scottish folk song. AULD is Old English for old, lang is Old English for long, and syne is Scottish for since. So Auld Lang Syne translates literally as old, long since. A somewhat looser translation, long ago or days gone by. The Brits brought the song around the world as they colonized, and Canadian band leader Guy Lombardo popularized it in America by playing it every New Year's Eve beginning in 1929, first on the radio and later on television. As a matter of historical coincidence, shortly after Robert Burns wrote his poem, Americans wrote our Constitution with its guarantee of freedom of speech, a freedom that includes the right to write and read poetry and prose, and to sing and to compose and listen to music, and to create sculpture and paintings and plays and music and dance, and to express ourselves in 1,000 different ways. For the founders, who long, long ago gave us freedom of speech, we lift a cup of kindness and days of Auld Lang Syne.
The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the American Civil Liberties Union, because freedom can't defend itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1891. That was the day that an Irish teenager by the name of Annie Moore arrived on the shores of New York. She was traveling with her 2 younger brothers. They had taken a 12-day sea voyage to be reunited with their parents, who were already in New York City. The next morning, Annie became the first person to enter the United States through the immigration station at Ellis Island. 700 immigrants passed through Ellis Island that day. Over the next 5 decades, they would be joined by more than 12 million. The facilities at Ellis Island closed in 1954. It is estimated that more than 1/3 of U.S. citizens can trace at least one relative back to Ellis Island. Many of those who came to Ellis were fleeing poverty or war in Eastern and Southern Europe. When arriving at the immigration center, they had to undergo rigorous health screenings and interviews. Sometimes they would have to wait for hours or days for their turn to be inspected. If they failed the inspection, they would have to wait for their case to be reviewed. Sometimes the wait stretched on for weeks. For some, the process ended with a decision to deport them back to Europe. In the early years of operation, immigrants often had to deal with exploitation at the hands of screeners at Ellis. Screeners would demand bribes or sexual favors. President Teddy Roosevelt moved to clean up the corruption. The immigrants who came through Ellis Island helped to build the labor force of the United States. From New York, they went on to work in industries across the nation.
On the first day of January 1892, they opened Ellis Island and they let the people through.
Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 41 degrees Fahrenheit, expected to be a tad warmer than we were yesterday. We might get to 50 degrees, but we might only get to 48 now, won't we? Though we have quite a bit of rain in the offing. Currently, winds are light and variable out of the due north. Mostly cloudy conditions prevail, and they will be giving way to a few showers later this morning. And a chance of rain is currently at 80%, which will probably increase as the day goes on to 100%, because we are expecting 1/4 inch of rain just today, with another 1/4 inch overnight. So welcoming in the new year with a rather wet and slick condition, so do take care out there. Pollen is rated at none. The air quality index is 52 parts per million in the moderate range, so take care if you have breathing difficulties. Though that wintertime daytime UV index is rated in the low range at 1. Oh, I should mention overnight lows should be in the low 40s, and the daytime high tomorrow on the 1st of January of 2020 should be about 48 to 50 as it is today. Barometric pressure is falling at 30.3 inches. Visibility is down to 4 miles, and relative humidity is at 90%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 48 and cloudy. Paris is 42 and sunny. Rome is 50 degrees and sunny. Kyiv is 35 degrees with a light rain. Kabul is 36 and mostly cloudy. Hong Kong is 62 and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 39 degrees and clear. Sydney, Australia is 68 degrees and mostly cloudy. And did you hear that people are retreating all the way to the ocean? Tens of thousands of people are sleeping on the beach outside of Sydney to escape the wildfires. Oh, they call them bush fires. But they have driven the population by the tens of thousands into the ocean overnight. I don't know if that's really helpful for their lungs, but they got nowhere to go. And San Francisco, California, though, is 46 and fair. And New York is 40 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Anonymous worker bees at Reuters bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Spain's state attorney yesterday, Monday, recommended the release of a Catalan separatist leader, Oriol Junqueras, from prison in what was widely seen as a gesture of political goodwill as the Socialist Party seeks support to form a government. The state's attorney's office asked the Supreme Court to let Junqueras go to Brussels to take his seat as a European Member of Parliament. He was sentenced in October to 13 years in prison over his role in a failed 2017 bid for Catalan independence. The EU's top court said this month that Junqueras was entitled to immunity as an EU lawmaker. The Spanish Supreme Court is expected to give a ruling in coming weeks. The state attorney's opinion was widely anticipated, as the socialists have been trying to persuade Junqueras' party, Esquerra Republicana de Catalunya, or the ERC for short, to back a socialist-led government by abstaining in a parliamentary vote to confirm acting Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez as premier. Spain has been in a political gridlock and without a proper government for many months after 2 inconclusive elections this year.
Je te donne c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
Sang-Mi Shaw of Reuters brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. South Korea prosecutors indicted former Justice Minister Cho Kook today on a dozen charges, including bribery, 2 months after he resigned over a scandal involving family investment and university admissions for his children. Oh, my. The accusations are a setback for President Moon Jae-in after the liberal leader named Cho, a former top aide to the cabinet post, to lead reform of the prosecutor's office, which critics saw as being susceptible to political pressure. The Seoul Central District Prosecutor's Office indicted Cho and his wife today, this morning, which would be, this morning, over family investment and use of their position to gain the admissions for the children, it said in a statement. Cho faces a dozen charges ranging from bribery and document fraud to manipulation of evidence and violations of public service ethics laws, the indictment read. Together with his wife, he is being prosecuted for falsifying documents regarding family investments and efforts to gain university admissions. Cho will remain free as he stands trial, and his wife Chung Kyung-shim, who is also a university professor, was arrested in October on the same charges. Their lawyer did not immediately respond to phone calls or a text message to seek comment. Well. That brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know that Netroots Radio is going to broadcast on, and we are going to meet up tomorrow, yes indeed, for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays on the first day of 2020. Do be aware that the PB channel has been hit by a massive crypto virus, and it has affected even their live shows off and on. So we'll stand by and put in appropriate content where available. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie d'un novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin l'âge tendre, nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver.